the popular idea, I think, in acting sometimes is that you can't play two things at once, and then you can't play Irene because it's a lot of two things at once.
Pardon me, I don't mean to stare, but I think I know you.
Claire?
I'm trying to find out the history of the blonde you've brought along.
She's a girl from Chicago I used to know.
Princess from Chicago.
Things aren't always what they seem.
I'll be damned. Lots of people pass all the time.
It's easy for a Negro to pass for white. I'm not sure it'd be so simple for a white person to pass for color.
So you haven't ever thought to?
What?
You ever thought of passing?
No, why should I? I have everything I've ever wanted.
This is my husband, John Bellew.
Does he?
No?
But you dislike Negroes, Mr. Bellew.
No, not at all. I hate them.
It's almost like we made this thing and it doesn't exist without an audience in a way. That's what felt so clear to me when we screened at New York Film Festival, which was really my first time seeing the film. And so it feels, you know, like such an honor for it to be in the world and for people to be receiving it. And I think I feel similarly to Rebecca in the sense that I think you make things, these babies of yours, and you send them off into the world and you hope they don't get misunderstood. And also you hope that they can sort of be exactly what they want to be in the world and they'll find their home. And so that's sort of how I felt about this film in a way is, you know, I don't mind things that are polarizing. I don't mind things that confuse. Those are the sorts of work that always stay with me the most. And so I think I felt a little trepidatious that maybe no one would see us, that we'd be sort of the quiet, shy kid in the corner that people wouldn't want to play with or engage with. So it's a dream to know that it's out on Netflix and people can see it really widely. And I hope that, you know, folks are having engaging conversations around the work. That's always my hope. I had been such a longtime fan of Rebecca's work as an actor, had seen her on pretty much everything she's ever done on film, and I had seen her on stage, and I just thought she was so remarkable. And so I was first interested to know that she was going to direct, and I thought of what a gift it would be as an actor to get to work with someone that clearly just understood performance and sculpting characters in such a brilliant way. And then I was sent the screenplay and I read the novella first, which I had not read before and wasn't aware of. And that was the first thing that sort of alarmed me. It felt like, how could I have not known that this book existed? How is this not something that I had been handed, if not by a teacher, by a friend? And so that struck me. And then I read the novella in one sitting. And then I immediately read Rebecca's screenplay, and I couldn't believe the way that she was able to articulate the text in cinematic language in a way that both satisfied this feeling of ambiguity, this feeling of being haunted that you have when you read the novella, and also felt like it took it into a new space, a new cinematic space. So I was so struck by it. And I knew that Ruth Negga would play Claire, and so I had the great pleasure of reading the novella thinking of Ruth. And if you've read the novella, you know that it's such a sort of sensual experience that Irene has with Claire in some ways. And so it felt that way reading the book, imagining, you know, Ruth and her presence inside of the part. And so I felt really beguiled by the world, and it was an instant yes for me. In fact, I dropped out of a project I was supposed to make. And then it took us a couple of years to get it made, and I continued just to make sure that insofar as was possible with contractual obligations, that I would be ready to make the film whenever the film was ready to be made. And so that's what I did. I love the idea of her as my savior. You know, but I love that. I'm not sure. I mean, she unlocked playing Irene unlocked so many things inside of me. With regards to colorism and sort of race, I mean, one thing that's interesting is the conversation that my character has with her husband, Brian, played by the brilliant Andre Holland. that conversation feels like it could be plucked from a conversation that Black parents might have now about, how to best prepare your children for the eventuality of racism inside of, the world. And so that had a real modernity to it that I think, was painful for both Andre and I to contend with, and also feels good. It's this idea that I think was so well articulated by Nina Simone, that if you're making art, how can it not reflect the time in which you're making it? And I certainly feel that way. I mean, I feel like movies and pieces of work, regardless, become, postcards of the time in a way. And so I love that inside of our film, which obviously is set long ago, there are ideas that feel really relevant now. One thing that I think Irene has not unpacked is inside of that conversation around what to tell their children, is she even has a measure of privilege by being lighter than her husband, by being a woman. She doesn't have to go into the world in the same way that her Black sons and her Black husband do. And I think certainly one thing for me has been unpacking my own layers of privilege, particularly inside of this industry, and what to do with that, frankly. I think we all have this idea that, we would be on the right side of history when we look at pieces that feel antiquated. And I think what doing a period piece allows you to do is to really interrogate how you would show up, how you would have shown up. And I think it shows you a lot about how you are showing up. And so I think inside of, the industry, yes, there is a huge problem with colorism, one that I've participated in when I was like an actor, just trying to get jobs in the beginning and didn't have, frankly, the privilege to think about the implications of the parts that I was playing because I was trying to make a living. But now I think, as someone that's worked in the industry for a while, it's like I don't really have that excuse anymore. I have a responsibility to interrogate that inside of the industry and hopefully to try, that's one thing that feels really inspiring to me in terms of producing, is trying to frankly create opportunities for Black women that don't look like me, that haven't been afforded the privilege of Hollywood's unfortunate bias. So I think for me, the way that Irene playing that part and certainly being involved in a project were so generated by women of color, in part financed by women of color, I think it's activated me to go, well, just more of that. That's what we do. We just do more of this and more often. I learned so much. I've never worked with a director, first time or otherwise, that was as prepared as Rebecca, which I remember Nina, our producer, saying that she came with the whole film storyboarded when they met, just that had such clarity of vision, and that's the thing that I think a director has to do in spades, is be able to communicate not just what the idea is to a whole host of people, but to be able to translate some of that passion so that everyone around is like, this is the absolute way to do it. And I've never really witnessed someone be able to do that with such ease as Rebecca. Astounding to me that she hadn't done this before, but in some ways you realize she has, because you watch her performances and they seem impenetrable by a bad director or a bad decision by somebody else. As an actor, you deliver a lump of clay and someone else sculpts it. And there's something about Rebecca's performances that you feel like she has sculpted it inside of the performance. And that requires such gifts. So I think just being able to really engage with someone that was so precise and yet so open, that was so self-assured and sure of vision, and yet so flexible about the bits that were able to have movement and poetry, and that just made me feel so safe and held. And I think particularly in playing a character as challenging as Irene, someone that has to both show and not show, someone that, the popular idea I think in acting sometimes is that you can't play two things at once, and then you can't play Irene because it's a lot of two things at once. So just being able to work with Rebecca, who is so yeah, so helpful in being able to chart that, and also so fantastic at making us all feel so safe and held, which I think is the space that you can do kind of the scary bits that are embarrassing to talk about. For me, when Irene is talking to her friend Hugh at this ball, because I think there's sort of one of the a thesis in a way, this idea that we're all of us passing for something or other. I think it's like a nice indication to the audience that if you have boxed the film too squarely into a film that's only about race, then you are missing the point a bit. So I love that. And also it was one of my favorite days on set, because just to see all of these beautiful Black folks moving in space, dancing and laughing and joyful, it just felt really rarefied and made me think about all the stories that might have been told during the time, you know, if Hollywood was interested in putting a lens on us. And I think that's like slightly connected. There's a beautiful question in the Q&A that this person is asking, as this is a story that's very unique angle, the lives of people of color in general and Black lives specifically, that is usually not discussed. Are there any aspects of daily lives of POC and Black stories that you're looking forward to focusing on in the future? And I like that, because I think to be able to capture our daily lives in ways that are undecorated and unadorned. And I think that what I love about passing is there's real simplicity in a way. And I don't think we often get as POC and Black bodies to exist in stories like that. And so I would just like to see more of that, and celebrating and being able to look inside of like our daily lives into our emotional landscape. I think that's the thing that feels really exciting to me.